time, where I said Africa needed to review its relations with China. And I've said it in many places. I love China. I don't have a problem at all. My father was Nigeria's first ambassador to China. And I think China offers great opportunities for Africa to develop, but I think Africa has not built that relationship in a manner that will lead to development. Okay, we have spent our time borrowing money, giving contracts to Chinese companies to build roads and build trucks, and building the Chinese economy, importing cheap finished goods from China and deindustrializing Africa. We can have a win-win situation where we produce the goods in Africa and sell in Africa, use our own raw materials, use our own labor, and then they can repatriate their capital. And that's fine. You know, they want to make money, they don't have to produce in China, they can produce in Nigeria and take the money out. You know, and this is really where the negotiation happens, you know, and this is where some African countries have gotten it right. Meles did this with leather in Ethiopia, stopped exporting leather to China. Now the Chinese have a huge leather industrial park outside Addis Ababa, producing shoes and bags and selling to the best brands in Europe. If you did that in Kano, you don't even need to export to Europe. 200 million Nigerians, if you just produce shoes for school children, that's more than enough, you know, in terms of a market. Textiles and garments, the Chinese are in Madagascar. So we can go and do this. And so we do have models now built by African countries that work. And we need to spread that message across. We now have peer lessons that we can learn. So I suppose for me, Africa is not all bad news, but the bulk of Africa in terms of concentration of incomes and population is bad news. We need to get South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, DRC working. All the fast-growing countries in Africa, all the countries that are doing well combined, do not account for more than 20% of African GDP. And that's why we're not going to see the impact on the continent until these big countries get it right and show the leadership. So what can we learn from Rwanda? What can we learn from Meles in Ethiopia? What can we learn from how the Chinese did it, okay, and now that they're moving on to higher value industries, step into those shoes and industrialize. And then also deal with the demographic transition, which we need, because we cannot continue growing at the rate at which we're growing, outstripping the rate of growth in GDP. So if you ask me, how can we stop manufacturing poverty on industrial scale? It comes down to the question, how do you have a demographic transition and an economic transition so that the youth bulge that we have will be a dividend and not a disaster? We have 200 million Nigerians. The median age is 19. In the next 20 years, we're going to have 100 million Nigerians between the ages of 20 and 40. Put that in perspective, Germany is the world's third largest economy, population 85 million. You need an economy for 100 million youth. It's tough. But then 40 years ago, when Deng started opening up in China, China had 700 million people living in extreme poverty. Today, China has only 30 million in poverty. When Deng started opening up, China had only 8 million university graduates. Today, China has 300 million holders of degrees and their equivalent. That's more than the population of the United States, and it's the world's largest manufacturing economy. So they did it in 40 years. Why can't we?